undeniable truths at play right now. One of them, we are back after break. Another one of them is that we've got a knockout matchup in store for us. A third one is if you're playing Smite on the computer, you need to have a mouse pad when you're moving around your mouse there, or else your aim's going to be all over the place. And a fourth one, if you got headphones and you need a cool speaker tag for it, well, we've got a great partner for you. SteelSeries is who we've partnered with for this event. They've got great mouse pads you can look at, speaker tags, all that sort of speaker plate. Got to make sure to get the terminology correct there. Speaker plate, all that cool stuff over there on the left-hand side. SteelSeries.com, a few undeniable truths there for you to start off this desk. But I'm not alone. My name is Dolson, and with me is Alpha Jackal to work through our second matchup of the day. And AJ, this one should be a good one. We've got the Cold Alpacas up against a Snake Pit, and in a knockout matchup, you got to bring your best.
You do have to bring your best. You have to bring even some spicy strategies if you feel like the chips are down and this is the last hurrah. And we're going to be seeing the first seed SOC team, instead of called Alpacas, take on, team that just got knocked down into this bracket quite
That's
comprehensively by Belt Slap. But if I had to have two strategies, because Belt Slap are through to the final anyway, you either beat them in the upper bracket finals and you face them mad in a best-of-5 set, or you lose to them right now and then face them in the best-of-5 set when they're in a bit of a jovial mood, when they're maybe a bit more complacent. I'd definitely take the second option.
That's right. Here you get a good look at the bracket as we work through this weekend. Cold Alpacas back-to-back 2-1, so both of their losers bracket games prior to this went the distance. So now you work up against the Snake Pit, who 2-0'd Picari Noobs earlier on this weekend. In a resurgent team, maybe. And it's always, I think, the big question on how do teams react after a game like that. I mean, if you're the Snake Pit here, you lose to Belt Slap pretty convincingly. You think your mindset's okay? You realize that you still got a pretty good chance here, or are you shaking a little bit?
You just have to do a complete mental reset. You have to just take every player aside, say to us a group, forget that set. That set's in the past right now. We need to completely move on. Let's focus on this new set, focus on what we can do better, and focus exactly on what we need to do to improve, if anything. Right. But that's just what you really need to get into, is the correct mental mindset. You put yourself in the best frame possible, then you can get the best result possible.
And it's important to be in that best mindset possible, especially when your opponents, despite being SOC teams, have actually proven that they can take some games off some big-name teams here. The Cold Alpacas, the opponents of the Snake Pit here. Kana, Preds, Pretty Prime, Vaporish Coast, and Astia over in support. I got to admit, AJ, I think this team has really surprised me here this weekend in the couple of games that we've been able to see from them. They've shown that they can make a set interesting against the number 2 SEC team.
They've shown that they do have what it takes to be an SCC team all by themselves. I've been especially impressed with the way Astiniax has been playing from that support role, been playing quite aggressively when it needs to be, but also playing those big supportive gods if the team does require it. But you can't be talking about Cold Alpacas without talking about the big man in the mid lane, Pretty Prime. Certainly the big star of this team. But it's always surrounded by those who are coming into the spotlight still. Vaporish Coast, obviously the Pentakid over in the duo lane, almost had another one this weekend, but decided against diving into the Phoenix for the best of his team.
Right, so it seems like really this is a team, obviously, where everyone has been able to do their job this weekend. But as you'd expect, in a standard game of Smite, you've got a mid laner you need to worry about, you've got a hunter you need to worry about if you're the Snake Pit here. I am curious your thoughts on some of the mid lane god pick strategy that this Cold Alpacas team has brought to the table. Obviously, Pretty Prime, very good at the picks that we've seen so far, but I think it's unconventional when you compare it to some of the god pools that we've seen from some other mid laners here out of this tournament. I mean, the Vulcans, the Giannis, it's really been Pretty Prime who's been playing those picks. Do you expect more of the same here from this Cold Alpacas team? Would you like them to maybe root some of those picks more in standard strategy, or does it kind of make sense? You're picking some of the Vulcans, the Giannis's, some of the unconventional mid lane picks. What are your thoughts on kind of that strategy?
Well, they've obviously been practicing with the Vulcans and the Giannis's, and maybe something else that a Pretty Prime hasn't had to pick yet. So I would much rather he's just plays gods that he's been picking, he's been practicing in scrims consistently, rather than go for the, quote, traditional picks in the mid lane, because they're traditional to some people, but they're not traditional to other players. And you want to be on your most comfortable gods in a high-pressure situation like this.
That's a fantastic point. It's easy for us to say, here's what's right, here's what's wrong, but really behind the scenes, these teams have been scrimming on certain picks with certain strategies, and that seems to be what's worked for the Cold Alpacas up to this point. Let's delay no further picks and bans for game number 1. Will be interesting to follow along with, especially when you consider some of the different strategies that we've seen out of both of these teams. It's been fun, I think, kind of watching the EU meta unfold, the NA meta unfold. One of those big meta pieces that we saw really yesterday and the day before Alpha Jackal was this Apollo, and you'd think that that's a hunter ban, but, well, I guess technically he's classed as a hunter. You'd think that'd be an ADC ban, but really it's been mainly focused around the jungle. What do we think about Apollo jungle, and is it worth one of your first 3 bans?
Personally, I haven't really been super impressed by the Apollo jungle, except when Johnny's been playing it, but I think that's more to do with Belt Slap just doing the namesake of their team to the rest of the competition so far.
Fair enough.
But for me, yeah, the Apollo jungle, the Saket as well, hasn't really looked particularly impressive in my eyes. It's difficult to say which junglers have really been the standout junglers, because there hasn't really been a true standout performance for me for any of these junglers outside of Johnny's Apollo.
Yeah, I agree. Not surprising when we consider what Johnny's been able to do at the SCC level consistently throughout the year. If nothing else, I mean, this is really just a focus on Preds. A lot of the early game initiation that we've seen from the Snake Pit has flown through Preds. It's been converting that early game into mid and late, where the Cold Alpacas have had some trouble. So I think maybe makes some sense there why the Snake Pit are putting some of those bans towards the Jungle Kana as well on the Cthulhu, very, very strong. And now we've entered a world, Alpha Jackal, where Khepri is worthy of a first overall pick. Does that make sense? Are we surprised at all that Khepri is first locked in?
Alright, time to make Orphan happy. Khepri is probably one of the best gods in the game right now, probably one of the best supports in the game, simply because it's incredibly difficult to burn through 2 life bars of either the high DPS mages which are being picked up, the high DPS ADCs which are being picked up, or the high health bar bruiser assassin warriors that have been picked in the solo lane. So you have 3 really good options of revival for the Khepri, and his long-range route is really one of the big sticking points for this pick. It's a fantastic CC route. It doesn't get diminished by extended forms of CC. It doesn't get affected by diminishing returns. So you're guaranteed that route duration. And the fact that you can launch it from a distance, allow your team to close in the distance and set yourself up for a Ra snipe, for example, means that you don't really have to put yourself in a negative position to set up your mid laner.
Nerf Khepri, I got it. I see what you're going for there, Alpha
Yes,
Jackal.
exactly.
I can hear Avrin furiously typing as we speak now. You know, with so many forms of healing banned out by the Cold Alpacas, that really hasn't pushed the Snake Pit to the side. I mean, Ra obviously very good in the current meta as far as sustain and his ability to heal up his teammates. Cupid is as well. So the Snake Pit obviously have a pretty spearheaded strategy around some of this sustain and the ability to fight around that. Do you like the way the Snake Pit have drafted through their first 3 picks?
I think they've got very strong gods in every single one of the positions. I mean, just talking about Khepri being one of the best supports, Cupid probably the 2nd best hunter right now to Ram, Ra one of the top mid laners, if not the best mid laner you can pick up right now. So the fact that Cold Alpacas have willingly given them all 3 picks, it doesn't... I don't mind it, given what they've picked as well. They obviously couldn't take away the Khepri from them, but instead of taking away the Ra and the Cupid, they pick high-priority gods in other roles. They pick the best ADC possible in Ram. They get the Guan Yu, which could have flexed into the support role until the Ganesh was picked, but also provides one of the best solo lane options out there and brings some sustain to their team comp as well, albeit a bit less than Ra.
And I do love Ganesh as well. We've talked a lot about Khepri and how he's very good. Love Ganesh. Gore and I will sing his praises from the rooftops till the cows come home. Look at the second wave of bans here, though, from the Snake Pit, still sensing hyper carry potential out of the jungle from Preds. Preds received 3 straight-up bans from the Snake Pit here with Kali most recently. And then, of course, a look at Pretty Prime with the Giannis. But maybe Giannis isn't where he was looking anyway. We've seen a Baron Samedi ban kind of make his way in every once in a while, and maybe this is a good reason why. I'd assume this goes over to the mid lane, given the way the picks look now. What do we think about Baron?
Really underutilized pick right now, given that we are on the cusp, if not fully into a healing meta right now. Baron's the one healer that just hasn't seen game time, but now we're actually going to be finally able to see the party monster that is Baron Samedi. And he's got fantastic setup in mid lane. I think he has a fantastic matchup against the Ra, because Ra doesn't have any movement abilities to get out of the route that he has. Forced to burn his ult for CC immunity if Baron Samedi does use his Coffin of Death. And also into the Nemesis. I again think this is a very good pick so far from Cold Alpacas.
I mean, a lot of this is just going to be, can you apply consistent anti-heal to the Snake Pit? It seems, at least. I mean, now you get Sun Wukong, who can sustain himself up on top of that as well. With 3 bans focused towards Preds, the question was, where does he go? And for the first time this weekend, I guess he got banned once. Now we'll get a look at a Thanatos here for Preds. Do you think that rounds out the draft here for the Cold Alpacas in a satisfying way?
I think they needed to pick up an Execute if they were going to go up against this Capri effectively, and my mind was either going to be Alquang, Achilles, or Thanatos. Which one would fit Preds more? We haven't seen them play any of those 3. Alquang's out of the question because only Johnny can play that pick, and that's been proven scientifically. It's actually a thesis which people have written on.
Right.
Achilles jungle, I think they have a bit too much frontline, a bit too much CC already. They need the damage coming out from this Thanatos.
So if you have to put your confidence in one draft or the other, which side do you maybe lean towards?
I'm actually leaning a bit more towards Cold Alpacas. I think they've got better teamfight control in their draft, and I fancy them to take it.
For what it's worth, Alpha Jackal, I hesitate too. I think these are 2 teams who've drafted different styles that maybe suit them, and maybe the way we play in the battleground determines the winner. The Snake Pit, Cold Alpacas, Game 1. It's Fuzzy and Lermy on the call.
Dave, it is indeed Fuzzy and Lermy, and I have to say, Lermy, I completely agree with what Ajet said about Cold Alpacas. I feel like it plays into their style really well, especially with Preds on this Thanatos, and it really helps with this Execute that Genetics is going to be able to pop out for that Scarab's Blessing. So do you think that Cold Alpacas just need to focus through Preds, or what's kind of their strategy, because they are the true underdog in this first game?
Okay, let's think of it this way. Thanatos is kind of an off-or-on pick. He either pops off or he does absolutely nothing. So I think Preds going for this early game type of style is definitely going to help out Cold Alpacas, especially when it comes to scaling those super hyper late game picks like Vaporish Coast on the ROM or Senna over on the Guan Yu. I think being able to really push this meta forward as fast as you can is going to be incredibly helpful. And really another reason that this Thanatos is so good is because look at all the slows present on Snake Pit. You've got Tarim, Worst Turtle, Angry, Spudio with the giant slow field. Being able to just immune it using the second ability there on the Thanatos is so helpful in so many different situations. And not only that, just to move it over to the mid lane for a second, Pretty Prime's got the ability to cleanse slows too.
Yeah, it seems like Snake Pit just totally understands that they wanted to slow people down, but then on the opposite side, Cold Alpacas just said, no, you can't really slow us if we can get out of it. So Preds is definitely going to be half the one to carry this game, and I think that you kind of touched on it a little bit too with Pretty Prime as well, with this Baron Samedi pick, a little bit unconventional.
It is a little unconventional. It has been gaining a little bit of merit in ranked. You'd be surprised how much he gets played in mid. People tend to think he's more of a solo pick or even a support pick, but this character has been kind of getting sleeper buffs off and on throughout the past couple of patches, and he does do some kind of mad damage if you get to the point where he's able to hit people. And that's really going to be the big question mark, is who is setting up for Pretty Prime here. And honestly, I think as soon as Stiniac makes this rotation towards the 5-10 minute mark, it's going to start to be Pretty Prime's game.
Yeah, it could be very much Pretty Prime's game, but we can't go anywhere without talking about the Penta Kid that almost got one, Vaporish Coast. It seemed that he was the one that was just doing so well in this first upper bracket, and then when he got dropped down to here, he's kind of been pushing his team a little bit slowly. So my focus is maybe that they're not focusing on Preds. Maybe everybody around Cold Alpacas is helping out Vaporish Coast.
Yeah, I think they kind of have to in a way, right? Because if Vaporesh can get off the ground with this ROM, we saw it before, he did get that quadra kill up in the upper bracket that we watched not yesterday, I suppose it was Thursday at this point, but even still, man, that guy is nuts on this specific character. So, again, like you said, if he's allowed to do whatever he wants, we could just see a Penta this game.
I honestly think that we'll at least see one Penta come out of Vaporesh coats from the cold Alpacas, but we've been talking a lot about cold Alpacas, but we can't sniff out the fact that Snake Pit are the #2 seed in the SCC, and they're down here because they lost to Belt Slap, and it's going to be very difficult for the cold Alpacas to beat them. They have the likes of Genetics, Spudio, Worst Turtle, one of my favorite junglers in the EU SCC team. It just seems that this is going to be almost a David and Goliath kind of setting for the cold Alpacas.
It does seem like that, especially since Cold Alpacas is coming from the SOC, and honestly, you might be surprised that they've come this far, but it's been touched on time and time again. They've got Pretty Prime at the wheel here in the mid lane, and he's got so much experience. It's actually crazy how long Pretty Prime has been around and up near the top of the competitive scene, and so he really can serve kind of as the backbone, especially to help some of these guys that were more on the console scene kind of drop down, not really drop down, but more so get more grounded in their gameplay. A lot of console play was really fast and, early game oriented, being able to get that lead online and then really spiral it out of control, whereas, I mean, we make this meme all the time, EU is more so slow and calculated gameplay. So being able to have someone really just to anchor you down, keep you controlled, keep the mental intact, that's what we like to see.
Well, keeping the mental intact, the Snake Pit might be seeing that there might be a rotation coming out from Preds. He is looking for the gank, but there is a ward, a Vision Shard, Dave's favorite relic when it comes out of coming out of the base. Just spotting out Preds. So Spudio and Genetics recognizing that just they don't even care about this wave. They're just gonna free cast it close to their tower line just to play it safe, and that's just again a testament to how Snake Pit play this. They play this very passive, not I would say passive, but very methodical in the way that they play these games and making sure that the strategy plays into their hands.
Yeah, honestly, that wasn't the best time for Preds to gank, mostly because they already knew that the advantage was in Cold Alpacas' favor there, and that's exactly the point when you don't want to show up if they're playing defensive already. Vaporesh Coast hit level 5 in the wave, and everybody else is level 4, and so seeing that, and me as the Cupid, I'm backing up to my tower, not getting anywhere close then, because not only that, I don't want to get stuck in the pillars, I don't want to get sniped out, I'm just going to be patient and wait. And so Preds just showing up there when they already were defensive, just wasting some time.
Well, it was a little bit of a waste of time, but nothing really came from either of the rotations. You got Cupid that hit level 5, but Angry right now is level 7. He's got a little bit of advantage, and Worst Turtle recognizing that might see if they push up a little bit, but again, as you said, Pretty Prime just keeping everybody grounded in those fundamentals of not pushing up when there's you know that you don't have the necessary advantage, is just going to stay back and play a little bit passive. But Preds is going to go up into this into the hovering death. He's going to try to see if he can land on Tarim. He does land on Tarim, and Tarim falls. That's the first blood for the Cold Alpacas.
What a great gank there. It didn't even seem like there was really any knowledge that he was coming through. My man's got to turn off the restricted camera pitch to look up in the sky for the Thanatos coming through with that hovering death, and honestly, that's exactly what Preds needs to do on this Thanatos. But look at that, Nemesis ult burned, and there goes the Stiniac. Pretty Prime's trying to find the return, but he's just going to grab Genetics and run away from that one.
That was a great return, making sure that the support player falls, but it's not necessarily the best trade in the world because you lost a solo laner for a support, and you can kind of give up a support every once in a while, but solo laners, they could be a dime a dozen, and once solo laners start kind of snowballing and getting a lead, then they can start making these aggressive rotations for these Gold Furies and these Furies on the left-hand side of the map, and that could spell disaster for the Snake Pits. They have to recognize that they might have to play it back a little bit, play a little bit safer, as we are 6 minutes into the game. The gold lead, no, there is no gold lead at this point. It's just a dead even game still, 1-1. Everybody is still on that even footing.
It really does seem like that, but when we're talking about solo lane rotations, it's kind of hard to say who's going to have more of an effect on these fights. Honestly, Guan Yu has been an up-and-comer in terms of a character that's been playing kind of nuts in these past couple of weeks. Healer meta is really in full swing, it does seem, and Guan Yu is just so terrifying in a fight. Having the ability to reset your cooldowns all the time by dashing through people, by healing your teammates, I mean, it's just such a nice combination to have, and I'm really glad that he's finally super viable again, because that character is just nuts when it comes down to it.
Yeah, you were talking about a healing meta, and I immediately see 3 healers, a couple of self-heals, and the Sun Wukong and the Thanatos, and a Cupid, you know, Partridge and a Pear Tree kind of rounding everything out. It seems that healing is very much what's going to be in this meta right now, and it seems like that's the way to kind of do it. Angry, trying to see if maybe they could put someone out of position, but again, Cold Alpacas just recognizing it. This just seems like 2 great chess players recognizing the little moves here and there, as they are going to go over ward, but they're going to fight over these mid camps. A lot of damage done to Pretty Prime. Genetics is just going to go ahead and dash away. I think those mid camps actually went to the Snake Pit, so a little bit of an advantage, but nothing too crazy, as they're just going to go right back to the red box.
That is the power of Raw Beam combined with the ability for Genetics to just brute someone down. Now, if only anyone was around, the ultimate was actually forced out of Pretty Prime. That could have been such a great fight, but they wanted to go for the Oracles there, so unfortunately no kill onto Pretty Prime, but that's one less coffin on the board for the next minute or so. So maybe they will be able to use that as their advantage.
Yeah, that party was a little bit lackluster. No one wanted to join Pretty Prime into that coffin, but, you know, and that's a huge win for the Snake Pit. It's not the biggest cooldown in the world. It still comes up in about 70 seconds, but it's still something that you can aggress on, especially if you are the Snake Pit, who really like to counterplay into mistakes that any team plays. We saw that when they played Belt Slap. There was one mistake, and they kind of were able to bring it back a little bit, but Snake Pit like to play on this back foot, this passive-aggressive kind of, we're going to make sure that you make the mistake before we fight you, and so this might be the opportunity that Snake Pit looked for.
And that's such a great reason why they are picking up all of these healers, right? They're kind of waiting for the engage of Cold Alpacas to go awry, and in the meantime, they can all sit down in the raw heal that has protections and power, and of course the healing, or maybe they go back and pick up some Cupid hearts, or maybe they are the one getting caught out and Genetics just gets them with a get-out-of-jail-free card. It really does depend, but check out the rotation here.
Well, the rotation, the Dark Pillars were dropped, the Hovering Death is going to come up, will it happen? It will not! Tarum gets up into the ultimate, and now the counter gank is going to come on. Fred seems to be the target. Fred's in slow, but he's going to throw a sight to keep everybody alive. He's going to silence the Kepri ultimate, but Tarum will pick up Fred regardless. Kepri keeping alive his teammate, and now Tarum is just going to hawk away. But look who's made the rotation all the way from mid lane. It is Angry. Angry is looking at the Guan Yu. Guan Yu is now brooded. Will he be able to get out? He will be able to. And that might be the reset. The Snake Pit picking up 1 kill over Cold Alpacas. A little bit over aggressive play.
That is exactly why Kepri is first pick material. That character actually changed the way that team fight went out. I mean, actually, Worst Turtle was just pushed up a little bit too far, got bailed out there, and then Angry made the rotation and turned it all around. The Krebs has been able to find that kill there and get some extra health and cooldowns back. That was a totally different fight, but this Gold Fury didn't even get to put up a fight. It got taken down before 10 minutes, and that's a great little turnaround there by Snake Pit. I mean, I guess it's not even really a turnaround, more so that it is a push forward, because they have just been winning all of these fights, it seems. The only kill Cold Alpacas got was a pick on the Terrorim.
And they almost had another one too with that rotation, but great rotation from the Snake Pit to counter it. But Tarum might almost get soloed here, as the Guan Yu is going to go ahead and shred the protections, recognizing that Tarum doesn't quite have that ult available to him, but just doing some poke damage, nothing too crazy out of it. But that Gold Fury that the Snake Pit got was a big difference. It's now almost 2k gold at the 10-minute mark, and when you play slow games like this, everything matters. But Fred's now a little bit caught out of position, but he will be able to use that Hovering Death to get away. So that's a big team fight ultimate and an execute to get away, but it very well could be possible they were looking at that Primal Fury, but no one was quite set up for that just yet.
Yeah, Pyromancer may be a little bit too early for that one, but check out the levels real quick. They really are starting to become an issue here for this Thanatos. We talked about it 10 minutes ago. Thanatos is an offer on God. If he does not have a great early game, he's about to be an ult bot come to the mid to late game. So not being able to use that ult for the execute is a little bit of a shame, but Preds is slowly climbing up a bit more when it comes to the level here. The experience really isn't so bad as the 2-level gap might make it seem, but at this point he really is going to have to make some very calculated ganks and participations in the next couple of team fights to be able to keep up.
Yeah, both of these teams have been known to be very picky about what they do, so when an ult like that, like I mentioned before, kind of cops off, it can spell disaster for one or the other. So making sure that everybody's set up, making sure all the ultimates are available, which they are for the Snake Pit, and they're not quite there for the Cold Alpacas. They could look for something, but Prez was looking over at a rotation, possibly on the Terran, but not going to really happen out of that.
Yeah, at this point, it's gone back to farming. I don't think teams are really too concerned about the Pyromancer at this point, and nobody really needs to force a fight, right? They will still win the late game, will Snake Pit, if they decide to get there, right? They've got the Nemesis for the Shred. Genetics is going to have a huge revive come whenever he hits level 20. I mean, they're in a really great position to kind of just stall out and wait should they choose to, but Snake Pit doesn't necessarily like to do that all the time. They do have the healing if they so choose to, but they also can get aggressive and kind of force this game down in the next 10 minutes, but that's really going to be up to where they aggress, on what they aggress. Usually, my favorite saying is you need to pick something to fight over. If you're going to fight over something, the only thing to really fight over at this point is the Pyromancer, and check out where they're going.
They are, in fact, going to that Pyromancer. The heal's going to come down. The support for Cold Alpacas recognizing it, but the Raw will go ahead and ultimate as Snake Pit secures the Pyromancer as the Dharmic Pillars were dropped. Genetics, right now, is just stuck in the Dharmic Pillar, but can't do anything because Terram is on the backside messing with Pred, so that heal drops. Genetics able to get back to roughly 3/4 health, and that's just going to be it. Snake Pit just steal a Pyromancer away.
I mean, that was a really great secure, right? That's why we saw people like Wolfie picking up the Raw so much earlier before this healing meta really developed. Being able to just beam and then beam again on top of an objective that can't move, that can't dodge the snipe, it's so powerful. You get so much effective DPS in that last second that it really is so difficult for anything else to steal it away. And now that this character is fully meta, one of the best mid laners on the map, it really is difficult to contest that.
You know, we're talking about healing, and there's only one anti-heal item in the game for the Cold Alpacas, and that's that Brawlers that Pred's picked up for that Thanatos. But on the opposite end, you see the Lotus Crown come out of Raw, something that we haven't seen a whole lot of, in my opinion. I haven't seen a whole lot of it, but Raw being able to pick up that Lotus Crown is definitely going to be helpful for keeping his team alive.
Oh yeah, you thought getting a little bit of protections just from base Raw heal was good. Imagine getting 20 more physical and magical protections just by dipping your toe in that. You don't even have to sit in it for the whole duration. As long as you step in it at any point during a team fight, you are going to have that Lotus Crown shield, which is insane. But speaking of insane, Sweaty getting out of here alive would be pretty nuts.
It would be pretty nuts as the Capri Revive goes off. The Aegis has been used, but it does not matter about the Capri Revive as Preds comes in. He's trying to keep himself alive, but it does not matter. Worst Turtle picks him up in return. Pretty Prime has made a rotation all the way from mid lane. He does have the ultimate available, but the beads and Genetics body blocks it. Doesn't need to use the beads. I've got your back. Now just stay back under tower as Terram has made a rotation all the way from the solo lane. He has run into 4 players. He has the ult himself to be able to get away. Primal Fury is spawning, so they are going to look maybe to see if they can get that. As the heals come up, and look at that, just everybody back to full health because of Lotus Crown, and now it's 4v5 over this Primal Fury that it seems that Cold Alpacas really want to take.
4v4, right? Both sides are missing a strong carry, but they will be up in the next couple of seconds. But again, the strong sustain from this Ra is really changing the tide of battle here. If there was no sustain on the side of Snake Pit, Cold Alpacas could have taken that Gold Fury with no issue at all. Everybody was way too low to fight, but 2 Ra heals and everyone's full health again. And it's just insane how much this character can do when given the space to do it. And I mean, we talked about it a little bit on this desk. It was mentioned there by AJ. If this Ra can get pulled out by the Baron, it could be bad looks, but the focus by Pretty Prime has not been on the Ra.
It hasn't been on the Raw. He's been trying to see if he can maybe catch somebody out of position, and it almost worked for them. The Worst Turtle was a little bit caught out of position, had to burn the beads available, but Genetics said, you didn't need to burn it. I was going to dash into the party myself to make sure that you stayed alive, and that really just kept that fight from just spiraling out of control, and Terra making obviously the rotation with his ultimate as well. As the Primal Fury will go ahead and get started up by Cold Alpacas, trying to see if maybe they can just bait somebody into the fight. Genetics having to dash away, but again, Raw Beam just does some Raw Beam things and does a lot of damage. Guan Yu is here to try to give some heals, but they aren't going to be nearly as much heals as a Raw. But there's the Scythe from Thanatos. He's going to go up into the Hovering Death to see if he can land on the Spudio. The Raw Snipe's coming out. The Execute won't hit, as there it is. The Kefir will revive as Angry gets Preds in the back. The ult will come out and do some more damage. Worst Turtle as well, going crazy onto Bay Forest Coast, and now the aggression is from the Snake Pit. They're dashing in. Worst Turtle having to disengage a little bit, though, because he got low from Pretty Prime's attack.
That's just so unfortunate that the sustain was good enough to keep Spudio out of execute range, because if he was able to get executed there, it would have happened. The Kepriel would have gotten cancelled out, and that would have been a kill for Preds, but unfortunately unfortunately, the hearts came through, the heal came through from the Ra. I mean, that's why you get rid of some of these characters, right? That is why Sustain is so good in this meta. You try to counter out the Khepri first pick with the Thanatos, but it just doesn't seem to be working out for poor Preds.
Yeah, and in response to that, the support from Cold Alpacas had to go ahead and pick up that Cursed Ankh just to try to stop a little bit of this healing that's on the side of the Snake Pit. And Snake Pit, they've gotten every single objective so far. They've got mid-tower, the first tower of the game. They've gotten 2 Gold Furies and a Pyromancer to spot it all off. It just seems like this game is slowly slipping out of Cold Alpaca's hands. Now down 5,000 gold at 17 minutes in the game, and more experience too. 6,000 is the experience difference.
Yeah, I think if we're going to see Cold Alpacas come back from this, they really have to change their style of gameplay because Snake Pit are ready for the way that they have been playing. Cold Alpaca's approach to the fight is to send Preds in first, which is, normally it's okay, right? He blinks in, gets a huge scythe, and does basically half the carry's damage. But the problem here is that because he's so far behind, he's not doing enough damage, that he's not chunking a character low enough. He's not able to get these executes off, so they need to kind of rearrange here. We also saw Worst Turtle and Angry kind of going in the back along with Terrorim to split off the rest of the damage. Unfortunately, Vaporish could follow up with the ultimate, but after that, nobody else could even get close to try and put the damage onto the backline carries of Snake Pit, so everybody else is just getting destroyed by this level 17 Nemesis, and meanwhile, Khepri doing their best to peel Spudio out.
Yeah, the level 17 Nemesis has been really the talk of this game. 2-0-2, been part of 4 kills of the 5 that are actually happening, and there's another objective for the Snake Pit. That it brings their total to 4-0 when it comes to that. So it just seems that Snake Pit, they could put their foot down on the gas pedal and totally win this game. As Spudio, recognizing that there's even a rotation from Preds on that left-hand side, is pinging where everybody is. So everybody on the Snake Pit, the communication, recognizing where the map awareness is, they could easily look to push this left-hand side tower to set them up for a later Fire Giant.
They really could, right? Because there's no way Cold Alpacas can go for the Fire Giant at this point. Even with an incredibly sneaky play, the speed from Worst Turtle to be able to make this rotation is pretty strong, so at the very least, it would likely scare them away, especially because the wards for Cold Alpacas are not the best at this point. Check out how much blue is up there on that top left side, but here comes the engagement as, oh my god, Astiniax didn't even have a health bar there.
Xiniax didn't even exist as a blink comes out from Terram going on the Pentakid himself. Pretty Prime is weak. He's going to come back down immediately and roll out, popping the Aegis. Pretty Prime at half health as well. Preds pushed up, using his ultimate, I believe, to try to get away. No, he actually still has his ultimate. He's just running as fast as he can to the enemy jungle just to see if maybe he can get something, as now the Snake Pit turned their eyes onto this left-hand side tower, securing the tier 1. And I don't think Cold Alpacas can defend this tier 2, but they are looking to try. Worst Turtle's just going to chase down Preds 3 levels under him. As, look at this, there goes Guan Yu, and Guan Yu explodes. Spudio picking up the kill on him, and now this is almost a free push for this left-hand side tier 2.
1v1 here against the junglers, but Preds is just going to ult away. Good call there by Preds to just run away from that one, man. You cannot box a Nemesis, even with the silence, even with the heal from the death side. This is not going to happen, but Snipe off the mark here. Pretty Prime is confident for his life.
Pretty Prime was able to pull in Worst Turtle, but Worst Turtle now has the Scarab's Blessing onto him. Preds is still in the back looking for his counterpart, but Preds, you have to look behind you. There's more people. As the Aegis pops up, he will not die, he will stay alive, but you will die, Preds. Worst Turtle picking it up, and now they can just stand in this raw heal when it comes back up here in a little bit, and actually they look to go ahead and disengage, recognizing that this might be their chance to go for a Fire Giant, but there is an Oni Fury spawning here pretty soon as well.
They've got a decent amount of gold in hand. We just saw most people spend about 2,000 gold there in the base, and so they are racking up extra items. In fact, we can actually see Genetics going to upgrade his shell, so in the next engagement, couple less autos from Preds or Vaporish are going to do a lot of impact, especially when this run can just pierce through enemies with his first ability. I mean, being able to do that and hit multiple people is why that character is so good in general. The fact of the matter is that once again, Astiniax is getting caught out.
Have you not learned your lesson? Worst Turtle is on a rampage. Just let him be. Don't let him get into your front line because the front line will fall away. As Juan's going to go ahead and get into his ultimate. Cupid will ult to try to keep him from dashing. He's going to get exploded by Angry, and they can just turn right onto the Fire Giant. Vapourish is over on the left-hand side getting a tier 1. He might even get this tier 2, but Tarim is over here as well. This is an easy Fire Giant for the Snake Pit as they do secure it. But in return, Cold Alpacas do get that tier 2 and is able to dash away Vapourish Coast.
It really seemed like there was not a unified call there. I mean, we saw Vapourish on that left-hand side for a very long amount of time. There was no real reason to just jump into that Fire Giant pit there. I mean, that is the second time in a row Astiniax has been caught out and eliminated before a fight even began, really. And that is the power of Nemesis Ultimate come the late game. If you find one person that can't really run away from you, they don't have an ultimate to burn that will keep them safe, you are just slowed and cannot move, and then you'll just get auto-attacked to death by Worst Turtle's Nemesis. Crit Nemesis, in fact.
Oh, that crit for 1,000 on a poor minion. It wasn't even expecting it. The crit coming out. The Wind Demon to give a little bit more movement speed. So when you were talking about chasing down the Cold Alpacas, you weren't kidding. He was looking for anything that he could possibly happen. And it just seems that Snake Pit, they can just run this down. They got the Oni Fury. They got the Fire Giant. They have all of the advantage in the world. Gold, experience. Now, 9 levels, I believe, throughout the entire team, just straight up experience-wise. So everybody is just a problem. Is now Tarim, he's looking for a 2v1. He can totally do this, or just at least keep everybody here, as the blink is going to have to be used from Preds just to get away so that the mid-tier 2 tower will fall in response to Snake Pit. And now Snake Pit can look for this mid-Phoenix because it's a 3-on-4, as Cupid will ult, and Spudio just deleted Guan Yu. It didn't even exist. Thanks to that wonderful heal from Raw, just keeping him alive. Pred's gonna have to look like he's gonna try to disengage, but it doesn't matter as the mid Phoenix falls. Pred's still trying to run away. He's gonna have to use his ultimate to get out. As now the rest of the Snake Pit looked at this left-hand side because Oni Wave and another normal wave are here on this left-hand side, and this is kind of the best objective you could get when the Fire Giant is going to be spawning in about 3 minutes just in case something goes horribly wrong, but I really don't expect that.
It actually was crazy how much work Tarim put in that last fight, just keeping 2 people away from that base, and honestly, it seems like Preds has been mentally checked out here. He hasn't come back to base yet. Nobody defended that left-hand side. He's ready for game 2, and it seems like Snake Pit are as well, but they are going to back off, play it safe. They know they've got such a huge advantage here, so it might even look like Worst Turtle is going to try and catch Preds backing, but instead over the Pyromancer while everybody else piles on that right-hand tier 2 tower, and that's not going to live for much longer, so are they really going to reset for another fire? It seems like a little excessive considering the lead that they have.
It does seem excessive. The lead is 14,000 gold. 11-2 shows on the scorecard, and it just seems that way maybe they're trying to get everybody at level 20. Maybe they're trying to see if genetics can get there, but it doesn't seem to matter. Look at this, 11,000 XP difference. It doesn't matter at this point because everybody on Snake Pit is level 20 except for genetics. But they do want to fight Cold Alpacas. They're trying to see if maybe they can catch either Spudio or Angry. You're out of position, but it doesn't seem like they can catch anybody. Preds is all alone. Preds going to have to use his Hovering Death again defensively, but he's going to come right back in as the rest of the squad comes up. Dharma Killer's going to come in. Juan will ride into the back line. Kepri will ult on the Spudio to try to keep him alive. The Cursed Ankh is used. Genetics will pick up the kill. Preds in the back, but Vapourish picks up one, but Preds falls as well. The 2-for-1 trade as Tarim now is weak as Vapourish gets the double kill. Vapourish is looking for anybody to help, but Spuddy will pick up his double kill. 14-4. Worst Turtle is just going to run at your tank. He doesn't matter how fast you are. He will catch you eventually. He's going to run up the mid. There's the dashes. He's going to try to get the slow. The crit's coming off. It doesn't matter. You're going to fall. That's going to be it. Worst Turtle will pick him up, and they can look to push this because it's 1 versus 3.
Absolutely. This should be the end of the game here. There's fire minions pouring in on both sides, and my man Pretty Prime is getting crit to death, and it seems like that will be the end of game number 1, and Snake Pit do take that one in a pretty dominant fashion. I was pretty convinced there that Cold Alpacas were going to come out with a very solid strategy, but unfortunately just all fell apart.
It did fall apart, and it seemed like it fell apart because of Worst Turtle. Worst Turtle was just phenomenal at this game, and just making sure that he doesn't just dove into the front line with willy-nilly with that Nemesis ultimate, just making sure that they can strip the protections. Just seemed like he was always there and always in every of those team fights.
Yeah, it really did seem like he was just able to eliminate whoever was walking at him, and a big reason that that was happening was because he had so much peel, so much healing. I mean, coming through with the second life, Genetics did God's work there, trying his best to keep his carries alive, even getting a couple of kills of his own just based on how well he was peeling. I mean, coming into game number 2, something's got to change in this draft. They really have to be aware of this healing.
Well, will Cold Alpacas be able to change something? We're going to find out here next game, but we are going to take a quick little break, so stick around. We'll be back in a bit.
It's officially game number 1 over to the SCC team in Snake Pit. And as far as European game lengths go, this one very, very quick, just shy of 30 minutes, right around that 26-minute mark. Snake Pit out to a 1-0 start. Alpha Jackal still with me to break down what happens here in game number 1. Alpha Jackal, what do you see here? I mean, this is kind of a cut and dry game, in all honesty. It seemed like the Snake Pit got off to a start that they felt comfortable with and were able to push that lead pretty consistently throughout the game.
So the thing that I saw, very simply to put it, was Capri is good, don't give genetics Capri. And
Got it.
Words Turtle on Nemesis is something I don't want to see if I'm against him again, because he just... I said before the game I was looking for some standout jungle performances this entire EU LAN, and we finally have one in Worst Turtle.
Worst Turtle, fantastic. And I agree with you here, and I'm glad that we weave some genetics into these replays as well. You know, it's not always the flashiest plays from these supports, you know. It's the carries that get their names in the paper, all that sort of stuff. But I think genetics had a standout performance here in game number 1. The reses were on point, and honestly, I mean, there were, maybe once or twice, if that, we saw the execute counter out that ult. There's one of those examples for you. But well-timed, I think, from genetics throughout the game. And now we're starting to see kind of this re-rise of Nemesis almost back into comfort with a lot of these junglers, and I agree with you there. I think Worst Turtle probably shouldn't get this pick over again. What do you think makes Nemesis such a good pick right now?
She can fit into very different pigeonholes in terms of what you need in your draft. You're looking for a tank shredder, Nemesis can fill that role. Are you looking for a higher pick carry? Nemesis can fill that role. Are you looking for a frontline tank bruiser? Nemesis can fill that role. You just pick and choose exactly what you need her to do. But more importantly, her early game is pretty scary if you are a carry, or even if you're a tank. Those slows are no joke, and that protection shred plus a passive being able to deal more damage, or so you deal a tiny bit less, really just makes it almost impossible to box her out in this early game.
And Worst Turtle felt like he was confident on this pick and comfortable on this pick throughout most facets of the game. Big damage numbers from Tarum, Worst Turtle, and Spudio. Angry there as well. Did a decent amount of healing at right about 8,000, so that's why you pick the Raw. Also some good damage numbers for him at that 10,000 mark. I think, this is one where, and I think they talked about it on the cast a little bit, where it just kind of feels like maybe in pick bans, the Snake Pit kind of got away with something that they were just a little bit more comfortable with. Obviously, a lot of it very specific on individual performance. But I think just the way that's drafted, maybe that gives you some comfort if you're the Cold Alpacas. Back to the drawing board and find something different here for Game 2.
Absolutely. I don't think they're going to give Genetics Kepri again. I think that's just a complete mistake and has been known for the entirety of Split 4 that you just don't give him that god. Do you give up the Guan for it? Do you give up the Ram for it? It's difficult to see exactly what you need to trade out to avoid him taking that pick. Maybe you take first pick yourself and just first pick the Capri, and then you're giving over a couple of gods. It's not a situation I would like to be in if I was the Cold Alpacas, because you have to pick and choose very carefully. But not just that, you also have to look at your own play style and think, right, we got to change it up, because that one just fell flat completely against this team.
That's a good point, and it's a great spot for the Snake Pit to be in, where Game 1 went so far in your favor, and those specific picks, that specific composition, picks and bans for Game 2 suddenly become a lot more difficult in the sense that, all right, we've already got all of these bans. Remember, there was heavy emphasis from the Snake Pit on Preds, and Cold Alpacas had kind of their way to answer back to that. Now suddenly you have to wonder, all right, so do we stick with the same ban strategy that we looked at from Game 1 after we just got decimated here in Game 1, moving into Game 2? Do we keep that same ban strategy, or do we have to take away some of the specifics that we just went up against in Game number 1? You're playing with house money, I like to word it, if you're the Snake Pit here at this point. Still going to be a Circuit pick. Apollo Jungle not banned out just yet. At some point, though, you got to wonder if we're ever going to see a Hell or a Yamoja again here, at least in some of these sets, because those two have become some of the most popular bans.
I really doubt we're going to be seeing Yamoja again. Hell might slip through the picks and bans occasionally. If Yamoja does get through, I'm seriously considering just thinking, what just happened? Can we redo? Is this like a practice draft? Are they mugging us off here? Is Yamoja a Loki or something? I don't know. But Cthulhu, again, is still going to be taken away here by the Snake Pit. Apollo is going to be left open, and the Kepri has been banned by Cold Alpacas, so Genetics won't be able to have that god available to him, and they still have the option to maybe take a Guan Yu or Ram here. Good adjustment so far from the Cold Alpacas.
Same, though. No adjustment really from the Snake Pit. Ramsey has decided there's a treat stuck in her bed. That is certainly not there, so if you hear some of this, it's because there's a dog searching for something that just doesn't exist. No change, though, really, in the bans from the Snake Pit. Slight pivot, as you mentioned.
Oh my god, I see what you did there.
Wait, did I do something unintentionally? I swear I didn't. I didn't go for anything there. So if something happened, it's pure wit and luck on my end, as Chang'e ends up getting
Sure, we'll go with that. we'll go with pure wit and luck.
You gotta explain my own joke to me then, because I totally missed it.
Okay, you said there's no change right as they locked in Chang'e. Okay?
Got it. Okay, that's just perfect timing. That's what I mean when all my skill points are in luck in the way that all worked out. I do want to look at this pick though, because I think this has been kind of debated by us behind the scenes on how this pick is. I mean, it's pretty Prima, presumably playing this Chang'e out of the mid lane. Where does your confidence level lie in this pick? I mean, obviously she's got some decent burst damage and the ability to set up well with her ultimate in some of these team fights. Is that enough, though, to warrant a pick?
For me, Chang'e's that one god that I don't like having on my team, but I also don't like facing. She is just straight up annoying, but not, in my mind, just not good enough to really warrant being picked right now. Yes, we are in a healing-centric meta, but Chang'e isn't really the best healer. She's got good in-combat healing, decent out-of-combat healing, good setup, decent damage, but she doesn't excel at any of those, in my opinion. So I just don't like the pick whatsoever.
Now, this is one that we have not seen in a long, long time. The Jormungandr locked in by the Cold Alpacas for a while. Remember, before Cthulhu, Jormungandr kind of fit that role, right? Giant behemoth that just kind of runs at you and has some damage and the ability for some of that CC in those fights. I suppose, you know, if this is going over to Kana, maybe the mindset is similar, Alpha Jackal, between playing a Cthulhu and playing a Jormungandr.
Just dive onto the backline and hope that you can kill them before they can kill you. Exactly the same playstyle as you would expect for the Cthulhu, but one of the things that they did do by taking the Chunga is they left Ra open for Angry again, and whilst he didn't have the standout game that we usually expect from Ra these days, he was a focal point that was almost impossible to deal with, and it combined well with the Kepri, because Kepri revives somebody, they're about 30-40% health, Ra instantly heals them back up, they're basically good as new. So they take out one piece of that puzzle, but the Ra still remains, and you cannot fight that Solar Blessing to save your life. It is just too powerful.
Yep. It's a strong pick, to be sure, here for the Snake Pit. I mean, there are a lot of... I think Cold Alpacas, they've drafted question marks, right? As far as, all right, we can see how on paper, out of the gate, where these specific picks in the Chunga and the Jormungandr specifically might be able to do well, but we don't necessarily have that data to back up. All right, these are consistently well-performing high-tier picks, but I suppose in a moment like this, maybe it's better to roll the dice and stick with something that you know has worked maybe behind the scenes in scrims. The question then becomes, all right, the Nemesis was banned out. Where does Worst Turtle go here for game number 2? Bakasura seems to be the answer. Talk about hyper carry potential. Do you think it slots in with the rest of the draft so far for the Snake Pit?
Excels with the dive from Guan Yu, the Ram Snipes will help with the dive for the Bakasura, the Ra can help and assist with a bit of long-range damage, so I do like this pick, but they are lacking a bit in the CC department in their 3v3, so I would look to see a bit more of a CC-oriented Guardian. You could have a look for the Ganesh, but Ganesh, it does have a good matchup with Bacchus as well, so it is a pick that can be taken here by the Snake Pit.
Still, more question marks roll through as well for the Cold Alpacas. Thor, maybe not so much. Bacchus, we don't see a lot of Bacchus. And somehow that's the least interesting thing on my screen at the moment. This would be something, wouldn't it? All right, so we're looking at this. A Nox does get locked in here for the Snake Pit. So we're assuming Guan Yu solo, Bakasura in the jungle, Ra mid. Does that mean Nox Ram is the duo lane we're looking at?
Nox support. It makes its return after it was played by PBM in the final weeks, and it is quite strong right now because it gets you that nice early game pressure, because if you get hit by the root silence combo, you are just dead with the ADC wailing on you, no matter if you're a tank or a carry. And you can also shut down what Bacchus wants to do, what Thor wants to do, what Chunga wants to do. You can root Heimdall before he gets to his crystal. It is just a phenomenal counterpick here by the Snake Pit, and Cold Alpacas have fallen right for it.
So, I mean, I kind of brought this up. You look at Cold Alpacas draft, some question marks there. The potential, absolutely there for the Cold Alpacas. You got to get it done here in Game 2 to give yourself a chance. Will the Nox support work? We'll jump in to find out.
Oh, Dave, I'm really hoping the Nox support works. I love seeing a good Nox, and when Genetics is piloting a Nox, it just becomes absolutely insane. Fuzzy Wuzzy still here along with Lermy, and Lermy, we focused a lot on Worst Turtle in that Nemesis game that he had last time, but now he's playing this Bakasura, kind of seems to be the same thing, but with this Nox setup with Genetics, I think it's going to be almost impossible for the Cold Alpacas to even get away from the Snake Pit.
Fuzzy, my guy, I am living for this draft. This is my two favorite junglers on the same team right now. We have the Nox and the Bakasura together as one. United they stand, and together they will absolutely... Okay, I have to be a little bit unbiased here, but I do absolutely love Bakasura. Love me some Nox, and of course, Angry running it back with the Ra can never go wrong, really. So it's interesting to see what Cold Alpacas has done to draft against it. But there are a couple of question marks, as was mentioned on the desk. We haven't seen Jormungandr in a hot minute, and Bacchus has seen some play in the Pro League, but it's really only been Neil Ma. But now that we've actually gotten to the 7.11 patch, Bacchus has seen quite a bit of buffs. He has some extra power in that chug, and the mana cost, of course, is not nearly as high as it once was. So perhaps this is Astinix's time to really bring this bad boy out and do some work.
Well, they're going to need something, because, a reminder, this is it. If Cold Alpacas lose this game, they are out. There is no chance for them to even think about Worlds. This is all that she wrote for it. the fat lady would have sung, but hopefully the fat man will sing praises of joy to keep them around, as now there's going to be a possible little aggression from this mid lane as Angry is going to be collapsed on. The spin to win, not going to be able to do too much damage, but it is going to be able to pressure him out a little bit. But again, it's a Raw, it's Angry. He'll just heal right back up to 3/4 health with that blessing and just be on his way out.
Solar Blessing is a pretty good ability, I would say, and Ron's clear is also pretty good as well, but unfortunately there for Genetics, that's miss number 1 on the Nox combo. Hopefully we're not seeing many more of those, and I believe Genetics is an incredibly mechanically skilled player, so honestly, for him to pick up the Nox here, this is really just time to flex some of the chops you've got and what you've practiced, because this really is going to be it for Alpacas, like you said. If they lose this game, they're out. There's no Worlds. There's nothing else in this tournament. This is it.
Yeah, this is all that she wrote, and I'm hoping that Cold Alpacas can bring it out. Maybe those question marks will become exclamation marks, because the Porsche is on a Heimdall, who is one of the better gods in that ADC role, but can be caught out, especially with that Nox being able to silence. But the Bacchus will just go ahead and sit there, pop a health pot, not too much to it, because there is no wave for the Snake Pit. That is one thing, the question mark that I kind of see, is that the wave clear can be a little bit dicey for the Snake Pit for that Nox and Rama combo, but now that they're both level 3, it can be easily remedied.
It definitely can, but the matchup for Nox into Bacchus is actually insanely good for the Nox, because not only can she cancel out the burp, but she can stop it from even happening to begin with. If she has any inkling of an idea that Astinix is going to jump in with the belly flap, just place the silence at your feet, and there is no more follow-up to be had for this Bacchus. He can't burp if he's silenced. Mouth cannot even open in that instance, and so Genetics really does have the matchup here, but let's just take a look at the rest of the team they're up against. Silencing a Chang'e can be good, but the root is ineffective if used alone, and of course Sinna is a huge target here, so being able to hold him still for everybody to slam auto attacks, abilities, whatever it might be, is honestly a lot easier just due to the size of that hitbox.
Yeah, that hitbox is really big, but it's going to be interesting to see how this Jormungandr works, because everybody's mentioned it. It's been a minute since he's been played in this scene, and I say a minute because I don't think he even played when I had to leave for a little bit, and he's back into this. So it's a nice little like nostalgia moment that I get to see Jormungandr come back into his role as the solo laner. But the desk was right. He plays the exact same way. Just press W key, roll face across keyboard, win game. And that's what Cold Alpacas are really hoping for, that they're going to be able to do that.
Yeah, and there aren't really any knockups at all to be able to trigger that passive, so in theory this Jormungandr is safe from being able to have his unfortunate downside of a passive activated, but at the same time, he really does have to be careful, because there's just so much CC, so much lockdown, and the combination between Genetics, Terrorim, and Worst Turtle all together. But here comes Astiniax jumping in, and the shell is popped a little early.
The shell was popped a little early. Beads were popped from Spudio, so he will not have that available. But I think he was predicting not only the burp, but probably even the ultimate coming out, but not enough mana from the Bacchus to be able to do that. So Beads burned. That is a win for the Snake Pit. They're able to get a little bit more lane pressure. But other than that, it just seems like that they're going to be able to try to play this slow. It seems like Cold Alpacas are playing more into the Snake Pit's game of making sure that they get ahead rather than just pushing this early aggression they could possibly have, because here comes Preds again on the opposite side, in the enemy jungle side, trying to see if maybe he can get a rotation or a gank or something onto Spudio, but Spudio's obviously going to be aware.
Yeah, it is unfortunate that speed comes up at basically the same time as purple. Just a little bit too early on the trigger there was Preds. If he was a couple of seconds later, it would have been really great to be able to remove some of the pressure that Genetics and Spudio have had, but his speed's coming up at the same time, and that's kind of the issue of being at that purple buff, is you risk having your jungle invaded, and one of the best characters at invading the jungle is Bakastura, and that's his direct opponent.
Well, Preds is going to go up into the air, maybe to see if he can land on the Guan Yu, but no, he will go ahead and just land on the back camp, because, you know, that's the way things work as a Thor, making sure that you burn that ultimate. But Genetics is around the corner onto Pretty Prime. He will get the root. The big burst will happen, but the red buff will fall in front of for Pretty Prime, even though he's at half health.
I think the concern there for Preds was that the Bakasura was going to be on those back camps, because when you're playing Bakasura and you have the attack speed boots online going towards that Golden Blade, you really do want to try and steal as much farm as possible, because the sooner you get to that Golden Blade, the better it's going to be for you to farm, and my man already zooms thanks to the passive, and if he can zoom even faster by eating up whatever farm is available, my man's getting a level 20 faster than anybody else on the team.
Ow, that's a couple of beams right to the face, but it doesn't matter because it's Bacchus at level 6, and he had a little bit of those protections thanks to the Chug, so Angry burning that ultimate, but it was set up pretty well by Genetics, and that's just going to be it. They're going to back away, and I think they also got a little bit of the wave clear pressure in the mid lane as well, so just helps out a little bit of the Snake Pit, but Snake Pit like to play this game. It seems like that today, recently, they've been playing a little bit more on the back foot. Not necessarily back foot, but maybe more of a, we want the game to come to us rather than what they have done in the past, which is we're just going to force it down your throat.
Yeah, when you're playing against people like Belt Slap, you do kind of have to play in that style, right? Because if you give Belt Slap any kind of a lead, they will just rip it from you at that point. There is no more lead for you to return to. But at this point, they are playing against cold Alpacas, so you would think they would kind of turn on the Jets. But at this point, like you said, they're kind of slowing it down, playing a little more calculated. They know that this is really what will secure them the spot in the finals, is if they can take this game, they're going straight there. There's nothing else between them and a Belt Slab rematch. But Pred's going up in the sky looking for someone, but this might be Thor ult number 2 that doesn't find a home.
Nope, he's going to go ahead and land on the mid camps, because he likes to ult onto camps for just that secure. So Pred's burning another ult again just to make sure that he can secure that. I think he was maybe seeing if Genetics might have been out of position, but it was just a little bit out of there. But well, if you look at that, Vaporish Coast had to burn his ultimate just to try to get away from a possible rotation from the Bakasura. And as you mentioned before, what is Bakasura good at? Invading. As the Blink's going to come in, he's going to go ahead and ult. Genetics throwing out his ultimate as well, just to give a little bit more. As Bakasura's going to come in, he's going to ult. It does not matter anymore. Genetics will auto-attack and steal the first blood for the Snake Pit. Pred's making a rotation. He does not have that ult available to him because he burned it on a mid-camp, so he's just going to waddle back to the lane and help clear.
I love the thought process from Preds to be aggressive and be the first one in with this Thor ultimate, but the thing is that he's been using it just a little bit too far away. He definitely knows when his camps are in danger, but it seems like he's just using way too much to try to secure them. And even at those mid camps, Angry was more than happy to just throw the Ra ult out. I mean, that thing's on like, what, a 60-second cooldown-ish, give or take? So, being able to pull that out is nice, yeah, but at this point, using it on those mid-camps is not the worst thing in the world for Angry. He's more than happy to keep grabbing him and Genetics more farm.
Yeah, and the more farm that you grab Genetics and Angry, the faster that this game will go. If they can get to 20 minutes before it happens, that'd be great, but Worst Turtle just being an annoying Bakasura is going to be, looks like he might actually be collapsed on as the Jormungandr's up down there. Root will come out, Beads coming out as well, but Jormungandr does not care, he wants to kill, but the support for Cold Alpacas will pick up the Bakasura. As now Terram has made his terror rain onto Preds, he's going to look for it, the ultimate will not connect because Bees were burnt by Preds. Now, Bacchus will go ahead and link back on, use his ultimate to see if he can get something out of it, but Terram will burn his beads as well. Tower Assault being used just to make sure he doesn't get knocked up. Sora will finally come down and hit 2! Terram is the target, but Angry picks up Preds. Angry is now on a rampage for this one, as Terram picks up another one. That is 2 kills for the price of 1. Oh, maybe
Terram's
even 2.
Gotta be so
but,
careful though. He's getting really
no.
low there, but Astiniax does not have a lot of health either. Angry is gonna pop the beam, and Genetics holding him down. The dash cancel for the last hit onto the enemy support. A nice kill there for the 2-0-2 Nox support, who really is making her rounds this time around.
See, so Lermy, I know that you always will die on the hill that Nox is a jungler, and I think we're seeing it here. A little bit of tank in that Stone of Fail, not too much, but a little bit. It helps with the power as well. But it also helps with the fact that the cooldown from the cooldown boots and that power. Lermy, I think you might be onto something with that, but Worst Turtle, doesn't matter. He's just going to go ahead and kill Jormungandr in his own jungle, get a blue buff, and waddle back away. But Preds is going to try to see if he can do something, but Preds, you should know better. Bacchus is going to blink. Worst Turtle's going to go on to him. No real follow-up, but Preds is just going to be really half health. And there's the Nox that followed up with Worst Turtle, but nothing's going to happen out of that. But we did get a mid-tower down for the Snake Pit.
And that's a pretty good advantage that Snake Pit had grabbed. And back to the Nox jungle for a second. Support is basically just a tankier jungle at this point, right? I mean, they roam around the map, they hang out with people, they help do farm. That's just what a jungler does, right? But this time, the jungler is able to, or I guess the support, right? I'm on this hill, like you said, but even still, being able to hold someone down or automatically force speeds is such a powerful tool. And if you're as mechanically skilled as Genetics is to be able to hit these combos consistently, you are pulling something every single time or setting up for the rest of your team.
Well, Spudio's a little bit of a pickle, as he's going to get stunned out, ulted, but Angry's just going to heal him right back up to full health. Genetics is here as well, trying to get that root off, but just barely, as Pretty Prime was able to dance away from it. The raw ult, not quite there to connect, but it was so close. You could feel the heat radiating behind him. Pretty Prime just walking away and trying to heal up as quickly as possible, but Angry doing pretty well for himself as well. He's got that 1-0 and 3, and he's already got a Divine Ruin done to try to stop Pretty Prime from healing as much.
He is absolutely farming right now, too. Needless to say, Ra going fast to be able to keep up and split a number of these camps has been so helpful for this character to get ahead, but not only that, to be able to have such nice, easy setup there for the Ra ult in Genetics' Shadow Lock is so incredibly nice, and one more beam would have done it there to a Stiniax, and look where everyone else is at this Gold Fury!
Well, the Porsche Coast does recognize the Gold Fury is being called, but he's going to get rooted and hit a little bit, but Snake Pit will get the Gold Fury. I don't think they dropped an objective today at all against this Cold Alpacas team, so making sure that happens, and even still, the Jormungandr had to pick up the red buff because Tarim was about to steal it himself. Tarim 2 levels up. In fact, if you take a look at the board, everybody is about 2 levels up, except on the reverse side for Porsche Coast is 1 level ahead of this Spudio, so it just seems like the Snake Pit are just out farming, out winning, and out securing everything.
It really does feel like that, but it's so important that the Pentakid is getting some farm here because really, he is the last hope of this Cold Alpacas team. If he's able to do some solid damage in these next couple of really impactful team fights, that could really change the swing of the game back into Cold Alpacas' favor. We are in a very, very unfortunate position here for the Cold Alpacas. Being 5k down at 13 minutes is a really, really bad game state for them, but all in all, it can still be turned around, even though it feels really bad to play right now. If they can stall this out for another 20-30 minutes till everyone hits that level 20 mark, it's really going to be about who has the better late game fight, and I would argue Cold Alpacas can easily rival any kind of fight that Snake Pit can bring.
Yeah, if it does get to that 20 to 30 minute mark where everybody's at level 20, Cold Alpacas can turn this around into their favor, but when you have a Bakasura who could just solo a Pyromancer in about 3 seconds, and with the help of, obviously, Angry, just give a little bit of a beam, it just seems that it's almost difficult for them to do. They are playing on this back foot. It's kind of like the Cold Alpacas are trying to play to not lose rather than try to see if they can get some aggression somewhere, and the Snake Pit know that a little too well because they do that every once in a while against Belt Slap when they try to play on that back foot, try to make sure that they can make a mistake. But Cold Alpacas, they have the aggression to do something. I think they just need to figure out where they're going to aggress on.
Yeah, the problem is they've lost that mid tower already, so it's so hard to be able to hold any pressure. You've seen this red buff constantly get invaded here, and it's about to go down again, but Rom's going up in the ult. This could turn into a bigger team fight than they initially thought.
Yeah, the support, the Bacchus trying to run away. He's going under his tier 1, but not recognizing that 4 people are there. Finally recognizing that Pred's just going to stun out Worst Turtle, but Worst Turtle will be able to heal up a little bit with the help of the Solar Blessing from Ra. Angry, just making sure that the pressure is always around. He seems to be everywhere in these fights, and he's still a level ahead as Tarim's going to go on to Pretty Prime. Pretty Prime's going to try to dance away, I think. There's the dance, as he's now in a bad position. He's going to get ult away. The beat's coming out from Tarim, as Tarim will pick up Pretty Prime. An easy kill for the Soul Laner against the mid lane.
You typically don't see beads in a solo laner, but just having them in that situation is so good. Being able to burn and take down Pretty Prime, who honestly made a huge misplay there by pathing up into the enemy jungle. I mean, I understand he was trying to run away and that was one of his only options, but at least try to run back to your team going into the enemy jungle when the enemies have dash. Dash is extra movement speed. You can't run away from that for long. And at this point, it really does seem like the hope is kind of fading as Snake Pit continue to grow their lead. They're just camping out Vaporish.
They were just sitting there waiting for him to come back to lane as he's going to have to Bifrost just a little bit to the right as Preds comes in and ults onto Spudio. It's going to stun him as well. Spudio has to disengage, but this Bacchus player is here, but he's going to get silenced out just like he called in that pickup, and look who has arrived. Worst Turtle is going to go ahead and try to pick up Preds as he does. Angry has now made the rotation and will pick up the support. Now the only person left is Victorious Coast, the Pentakid himself, and he can't do anything. He's just going to have to sit at his tier 2 as the tier 1 will just inevitably fall.
Angry still does have all, and Spudio's got the snipes as well, but it looks like everybody from Cold Alpacas is just going to give up this left-hand side. They might even lose this tier 2 here as well, and honestly, if they're going to put Prime on the right side of the map, they sure do deserve to lose that one then. There's not a whole lot of farms to be getting, though. I mean, Prime right now is getting chased down by this level 16 Guan Yu, and Vaporish has to just get out of here and try and live. It's so hard for them to defend these things because they're just so far behind.
They're incredibly far behind. 4 levels just in the support alone is incredible. 8,000, almost 9,000 gold ahead at 16 minutes. This is the point where if I was playing a ranked game or even a casual, I might be even tempted to hit that little F6 button, but Cold Alpacas, they know that they can come back from this. They've come back from games like this before. Just can take some time, and I don't know if time is what they necessarily need, because the more time that rolls, the more Snake Pit can roll over them.
Yes, and it all really started when that mid tower went down. That opened up so much for basically everyone on Snake Pit to start invading. Look at this attempt here onto Angry. He is getting zoned out by that wall, and Bacchus is trying to do his best, but Angry is too fast, man.
Yeah, that movement speed with his passive is going to help, as now everybody is here. Worst Turtle is going to try to get some ults. Angry is going to be the target for that Jormungandr that will not hit. He's too fast. Now, look in the back as well. Guan is trying to do something just to keep the front line away, as Angry can just sit inside of his Solar Blessing, and Guan will be able to heal up. But now the Spudio has made the rotation and was able to get that Jormungandr. So he is here. They're looking down to charge this mid lane as Preds, I believe, ulted over to the left-hand side just to get some more farm. It seems that the mental game that Cold Alpacas are in they're just losing the mental game as well, because now the Snake Pit can run down this mid lane, get this tier 2, and a Fire Giant might even be free for them.
Look at this sustain, though. We saw Angry at basically 1 health in the beginning of that fight, and now he is up, pushing towards this front line, allowing Spudio to get the kill here. And what can you do as Cold Alpacas in this instance? I mean, genuinely, there really is not much that they can defend anymore. Poor Pretty Prime is level 14, doing his freaking best to try and defend this, but with a level 18 Guan Yu zoning you out, the Stiniax does jump in, and honestly, that's still for him. No getting out of that once you've spent that ability. But, man, Phoenix at 18 minutes, that's just insane.
Well, and I think Spudio will be able to get the double kill, and this could be the turn of the game. Cold Alpacas, they might be packing their bags a little bit early as Pretty Prime is out of target, and Spudio gets the triple kill at the end of this game. And look who's trying to hear. Preds is here, but Worst Turtle will pick him up. That will be a deicide. Cold Alpacas, you're getting sent home. Sorry, but the Snake Pit are going to the finals.
What an insane turn of events there. This game is barely 18 minutes long, and they're still vibing here in the Titan room, doing their best to farm kills, I guess, but they're also farming in victories as well. That was incredible. The power of Nox is really just showing off here, and Genetics with those mechanics really able to pull off such a great character to see in support.
Yeah, the Nox was almost a game changer at certain points. Being able to silence Chang'e, Pretty Prime out of being able to dance away from damage, being able to set up some raw snipes, and making sure that the Rama was able to clean up those snipes whenever they were able to get away, especially at the end of the mid Phoenix fight. So just seems that everything worked and supported around Genetics, and we talked about him earlier on the Khepri, but now we see him on the Nox. He's got a pretty extensive god pool, and he's definitely helping his team out, making sure that they go to the finals.
Yeah, and they definitely deserved it here. You could just see they kind of walked all over this set, man. So maybe next set, Belt Slap needs to be a little bit more careful about Genetics. Ban out that Khepri, ban out the Nox.
Banning out a Nox would sure be interesting, but Dave, I gotta ask you, that just seemed like a walk in the park for Snake Pit. Can they overcome the curse of Belt Slap?
Yeah, I don't know there, Fuzzy. Belt Slap is a whole nother beast, I think, from what we've seen from other teams here this weekend. But this does give Snake Pit some momentum, especially an 18-minute win. This one not particularly close at all. Faster than the first game was by about 8 minutes. Alpha Jackal with me once more, one final time here for this set, not only to break down Game 2, but to break down the entire set in general. I think even more so than Game 1, AJ. Game 2 it was really kind of decided in picks and bans.
This was just an exhibition match, to say the least, of
Sure.
This is what we are capable of, and this is how we should be playing against Belt Slap, with confidence, with almost a bit of jank behind them in the picks and bans, but more so that free-flowing team fight spirit that we saw in them in this game. It just looked fluid from them consistently, and as you said, it all starts on the picks and bans. That Nox pick just completely silences out the rest of the competition from Cold Alpacas.
And I'm glad that you sort of brought up the PBM and maybe another support or two at the SPL level. We're playing this Nox support pick because obviously it looks wild. You see it load in to the battleground and you're thinking there's no way this works, but it has worked. At the highest level, in fact, it has worked, and it works here. Again, I don't know if this is one of those picks where suddenly, you know, every game is deserving of a Nox support, but maybe Alpha Jacklets, in the right moment, this pick can work, and maybe this was just the right moment for the pick.
I'll give it sort of a B+ on the support rating tier list right now.
Sure.
Isn't good in every scenario, but is a fantastic counter pick and can be drafted later on in the draft rather than as the top end of it. And it will do extremely well when picked into the right compositions. And this was the perfect composition for it. You have a big line ultimate damage coming out from the Ra. You've got setup for the Bacchosaurus, set up for the Ram Snipes. It was just a perfect fuel for the fire here, and only one kill given up, and that goes to Astiniax, of all people.
That's right, he gets the one kill on the board. These are always kind of tough to break down, I think, because it's just such dominance from start to finish, where everything was firing on all cylinders for the Snake Pit in this one. I wonder if the fact that Game 1 was just a little bit closer, I'm not going to say it was otherworldly close, but just a little bit closer, maybe gave the Snake Pit a bit of a wake-up call in kind of the adjustments they need moving forward. The big question is, and Fuzzy kind of prompted me with this one, I might prompt it to you there, Alpha Jackal, is this the type of team now in the Snake Pit that can finally unseat Belt Slap? Because, Belt Slap go into the finals, they've got that one-game advantage in a best-of-5 set. Is this now a Snake Pit team, after just one turnaround set, you think brings enough momentum into the finals against Belt Slap to take a win?
Well, from what we've seen from Belt Slap, they've lost games in two separate ways. One, they've been blown out completely from the very get-go, just one team's come out at 100 miles an hour and just run them over. Or the other option is that they've drafted this unbelievable stall and team fight team comp that just can't be beaten in that late game. That second option was done by the Pappies in the one set that Belt Slap have lost on record. That was in the split 2 semifinals. The other option has been deployed by teams throughout the splits, where they've taken single games rather than sets off of Belt Slap.
Right.
And to me, it looked like Cold Alpacas were drifting more towards that first option when they've just come out the gates at 100 miles an hour. They have done that just now to Cold Alpacas. They've just completely annihilated them in the blink of an eye, and I expect them to want to try and continue that sort of fast pace into these next set.
Well, here's our final look at the EU schedule for today. One final game be kicking off here in just a few minutes. Belt Slap versus the Snake Pit. Of course, that's a best-of-5 finals. Actually, and I'm curious, do you think that affects things at all? It is one game in hand, so Belt Slap will be going into this finals up 1-0. Do you think the fact that it's a best-of-5 changes anything?
I don't think it changes much. I think Belt Slap would still be overwhelming favorites, regardless of if they were the ones that were down a game deficit. Because the one time they just came back and stomped 3 games in a row against the Pappies, and it wasn't even close.
Yeah, maybe it's worse suddenly for the Snake Pit. Now you've got to beat Belt Slap 3 times out of 4 games that you're playing, or I'm doing the math totally wrong there. I'm not going to try to do it. You got to beat Belt Slap 3 times in a set. That's going to be difficult to do. Regardless, we'll get to the EU final, see who's qualifying on to Worlds right after this break.